Hi, I'm Dr. D and welcome. In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 ways that you can break the cycle of negative and toxic relationships. Because what happens is after a while, they become patterns. And in order for us to change, we have to think about what are we willing to do? What kind of work are we willing to do to disrupt those patterns? Now, in all seriousness, right, we are creatures of habit and we like the familiar, even if the familiar is unhealthy. But after a while, doesn't it feel like you've got to start doing something different because all of these relationships that you've had seem to be with the same type of person? And so what happens is, what are you going to do to change that pattern? Like, what kind of work are you willing to put in? Rather than what I would say in therapy is kicking the can down the road, right? We all know we should do things, and whether or not we're going to do those things is often a different story. But then you have to ask yourself, really, is this the kind of life that I want to lead or live if I keep making the same choices in people that have created a negative and toxic relationship pattern in my life? I doubt it. So let's get started. The first thing to do is to become aware of this pattern and be willing to take a step back and say, okay, I have this pattern. And ask yourself, why am I choosing this person? Is there something about my first family, or what we would call in therapy your family of origin, that is affecting me and how I view people and how I attract certain types of people that is unresolved? Lots of times, maybe we're raised with a parent who is a certain way, I don't know, maybe they're angry or they're mean or they're narcissistic or they're one of those things, right? And because we have unresolved trauma or unresolved conflict from our first family, we tend to navigate towards these people with hopes of maybe this person can see me for the person that I really am. And maybe this time with this next person, it will be better. And I'm going to be hopeful that maybe it will be a different type of relationship, even though they're the same kind of person, and that they're going to see me differently. So then you have to ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? What kind of person am I seeking out? Why am I seeking out this type of person? So the awareness is really key. And then asking and answering those questions will start to get you on another path. That's one. The second strategy you can use that I often work with people with is, so grab a journal or grab a piece of paper and start to write down your relationship history and all those people you've been involved with. Put them in columns, put all the things about them, right, that are common between all of them or just in general. Their behaviors and their personality, maybe what they look like and how they communicate and what they bring to the table. And when you start to do that, right, when you really take the time to do that, you'll notice some common denominators, I would say, right? Things that the ways in which people are and their personality, which most likely will transcend through all of these relationships. And that's important because when we think about the one over here, the one over there, and we don't really sit down and do the work and write things out, it's really difficult for us to connect the dots because we have all these things going through our mind. We're trying to figure some things out. But if you write them down and you just write down lots of, what, like I said, personality, behaviors, and communication and background, and could be anything. Just get the information on a piece of paper in columns with these different people, and then take a step back. And what do you see? What do you notice? Are these the same types of people? Probably, and then you want to ask yourself, like, again, why am I attracted to these types of people? So that's a second thing you can start to do to really disrupt this pattern. Another thing that's really important is to identify those triggers that come up, right? We all have them. And when we can identify the triggers, it will help us to pivot in that moment. Like, oh, wow, this person reminds me of whatever, this other person I dated, or my mother or my father, and there's a trigger for me, or they're acting a certain way, and that's a trigger for me. And so even though you might feel comfortable in these unhealthy relationships, at that moment, at that time, you want to write down these triggers, and you want to be able to identify them so that when you see them and you feel them, that you have a plan to do something different. Because you really have to take stock at what is driving you to stay with this person. right? Because that's really where the exploration, where the self-exploration, where the insight comes from. I mean, you can write down all of those things, and then it's like, then what kind of actionable plan are you going to have so that you can once again disrupt that pattern? So the triggers are really important, because everyone has experienced that, where someone says something or they do something and we just feel it. So instead of just ignoring it, you want to feel it, acknowledge it, and say, hey, that's one of my triggers on my list. I'm going to back away. That is either a cautionary yellow flag or that is a significant red flag. And you want to be able to do that for yourself. So number 3 is identifying your triggers. The 4th thing is, it's more personal towards you. It's really about, okay, so here are all these ways these people are showing up, and I've done my columns, and I've looked at my relationship history, and I've done all that. What about me? You're asking yourself. What about me? What am I doing? Who am I? How am I showing up in the relationship? What are some of the things that maybe I'm doing that I need to take a step back and think about myself, right? Because we all contribute something. What is it about me that makes me want to stay in these relationships? I don't know. Do you have fears? Is there an attachment issue? Or when you're thinking about why you're staying in this relationship, I mean, don't you feel like you demand more or want more for yourself? You have to think about, do you feel like you're worthy to have a better and healthier relationship? I mean, these are really important questions, because after all, this is your life, right? This is it. And so you have to think about, like, what am I doing to propel me into staying in this relationship? What is it about my personality? What is it about my personality? What is it about my background? What is it about me that contributes to that relationship pattern? And I think that that's really key, because one of the hardest things to do is to really look at ourselves and to think about our contribution, because lots of not great feelings come up, right? Maybe we feel embarrassment or shame, or we don't really know how to, maybe we don't even really know what our feelings are. But what we do know is that we just don't feel good when we have to take a step back and look at ourselves. But in honesty, isn't that what it's all about? Is about looking at yourself and understanding what's motivating your behaviors, what's motivating you to stay, what's motivating you to leave. Those are all really important things to take a look at. And so introspection is really key in unraveling these negative and toxic patterns of relationships that you've established. And finally, the 5th strategy would be to create a greater risk. And I talk about this all the time in therapy. It's really about, listen, I mean, time stops for nobody, right? I mean, time just keeps ticking on. And if you're thinking about, okay, so like in 6 or 9 months, right? 6 or 9 months are still going to come and go, right? Time doesn't stop. Those months are still going to tick away. They're still going to happen. And you just think about, if it's like 6 months or a year down the road, and I'm right here, and I have the awareness about the patterns that I've established, and I do nothing, right? Then where will you be in 6 months, 9 months, or a year? Same place. So you have to create a greater risk. I want to create a greater risk so that I get my life moving in a better direction, because the risk is, if I don't do that, I'm going to still be the same place, no further ahead, still stuck, probably still making more relationship choices that are unhealthy for you, right? So then you have to think, I don't want that. I do not want to be in the same place. So then the risk is, I want to be able to say to myself in like 6 months or not, whatever months it is, it doesn't really matter, that when I reflect back, I want to say, I am so glad that in that moment that I became really aware of these patterns, I did something, because now all of those months have gone by. And instead of saying I've done nothing, I can say I've taken some teeny tiny steps. I've taken some baby steps to get me out of this pattern. And I feel really good about that, because at the end of the day, all you really have to do is just start. And so I hope that helps you. I get this issue a lot in therapy with people. They come in, and when I start unpacking or talking about their relationship history, boy, do I see a pattern there. And then we go through a lot of those things I just shared with you to help them, to get them to a different place. And when they're doing the work in between sessions, which is really important, they have some of those moments like, wow, like, look at these people I've chosen. This is my first chapter. This is where I started. These are the people that I've chosen to have in my life. And I don't want to have those types of people in my life anymore because they're negative and they're toxic, and I don't want to live my life that way. And I hope that helps. Always looking for feedback, suggestions. If you want to shoot me a DM on my Instagram at Dr. K. Davin, I'd love to hear from you. If you have another relationship question, shoot me that as well. You can also make a comment under the video, or you can also send me an email at hello@kristindavin.com. Always here to help, and thank you again.